Okay, one of the key differentiators for the MGS-400 series is the user interface. As part of the development, we identified that for many of our customers, quite antiquated methods of user interface and calibration and configuration meant that it was quite difficult for the contracting installers from an installation, commissioning, and maintenance procedure. So we developed an app which is freely available to download for both Apple and Android devices through Bacharach, and you connect to the devices with your app via Bluetooth communications. So to activate the Bluetooth, you need to use the magnetic switch that we discussed earlier. And the reason that you need to activate the Bluetooth is that to have it activated continuously would be an additional power drain on the instrument. And it would also mean that if you had multiple instruments in the same room, if you tried to connect to one, you would not necessarily be sure which of the MGS detectors you were connected to. So to activate the Bluetooth, you simply utilize the magnetic switch. You hold it for a second just underneath the unit. And you hear that brief beep there. And then you take your app. The unit is now in discoverable mode. So you simply click this here to connect. And you'll see the unit appear on your screen here. So you click to connect. And now it's connecting to the app. Okay, so once you're connected, you'll see this opening screen here. We have the, in the center here, we'll have the refrigerant gas that it's connected to on the detector. A real-time indication of the parts per million reading. You'll have the unit across the top here and one of the serial numbers. And then there are a number of different items that you can use on here, and we'll go through each of these step by step. So you have a calibration button, a details button, you can disconnect from the unit, and you can restart the unit as well. Just a quick note on this green circle that you see here. This is indicative of the current alarm status of the detector. So here we're in a no alarm condition. If there was a first stage alarm condition, this circle would be a yellow or amber color. If it was in a high stage alarm, this circle will be red in color, just to give you that indication. And shows the status here as well. So in addition to these 4 buttons I mentioned here, along the bottom of the app screen here, you can see an additional 4 buttons. We have the home screen, which we're on here, the test screen, configuration, and logs. So if we just look along the top of these first 4 buttons here to start with, I'll start off with the details screen. So the details screen is really just a record really of the current setup and status of the detector. You can't make any changes or configuration on this screen. So it will show you the alias of the detector. It will show you the firmware version. It will show you what your alarm set points are for the detector. It will show you when there's a calibration due in terms of number of hours. It will show you the sensor details, the sensor temperature. It will also show you what your alarm behavior is set to do. And as I say, this is a nice reference screen just to identify how the detector is currently set up. You come back to the home screen here. So now you have the details screen. You also have the calibration screen, which I'll show you here. So one of the challenges certainly with the Bacharach legacy products and many others in the market actually is the process to calibrate or gas test a detector is quite convoluted, often involving intrusive use of tools, adjustment of potentiometers, use of different electrical tools. Whereas the interface here with the MGS-400 series makes it very quick and simple and easy to do the calibration and the configuration, as we'll see shortly. So on the calibration menu, you can see here you can have a calibration or a standard bump test, which is just a quick check to make sure the sensors respond correctly. On the calibration screen here, you can see you have the capability to populate the calibration gas data. If you source the calibration gas from Bacharach, you can actually use your phone to scan the barcode on that calibration gas cylinder, and it will automatically populate the data that you have here. So that gives you that traceability on the calibration gas that you're using for your calibrations, and from an audit perspective, it gives you that confidence. So once you have your calibration gas details in here, you will simply click to start the zero calibration, and that will set a zero baseline of the sensor so that the sensor knows that there is actually 0 ppm of the target gas there. Once the zero calibration is complete, you will click and start the span calibration. When you start the span calibration, you simply have the calibration adapter attached to the front of the detector with your calibration cylinder and tubing, and you simply switch the calibration gas regulator to on. It will flow the gas across the detector, and it will automatically go through that calibration process. Once the calibration is complete, you'll get a notification to say that the calibration has been successful. And at that stage, the app will automatically generate a calibration certificate for that detector. So again, from a traceability perspective, with regard to the maintenance requirements of both the instruments and also the maintenance requirements to comply with the relevant standards, that gives you that confidence and that traceability of that calibration. And it's a very simple procedure. Okay, so we've gone through the details and calibration screen here. So obviously we have the disconnect button to disconnect from the Bluetooth communications. We have the restart button. So working across now these buttons along the bottom of the screen here, I'm going to skip straight to the configure button. So the configuration screen is really a very useful tool for when you are setting up the instrument initially as part of the installation process, and also as a checkpoint when it comes to commissioning, and also as part of the maintenance regime. So if I just go through each of the different options here, so you'll see the different variations across the screen here. So we have the alias button. So this is where you can go in and you can input a different name for the location of the detector. So as you can see, the default is the MGS-400 CO2. You can go in here and you can change this to say cold room A, for example, and you can click OK, and the alias automatically changes to cold room A here. So you can do that across your facility to have a relevant alias for your detectors. You'll notice here that there is some passcodes in place for both the Modbus and the Bluetooth connectivity, and that's again to provide some level of security so that the configuration, for example, can't be tampered with on the instrument. You can also set the instrument back to factory default settings. And then the final section here is around your alarms and your alarm behavior. So you can see here you have low alarm set point, high alarm set point, and you can also set your alarms to be latching or non-latching. So again, it's a very simple touchscreen. You can put your alarms in here. I think we have that at 1500. I'll probably leave that at 1500. But you can change that. There are some small checks and balances in here. So for example, you can't set your high alarm set point lower than your low alarm set point, and you also can't set your alarm set points outside of the expected bandwidth levels of the sensor from a range perspective. The alarm latching set point you can set in here to enable or disable latching. So just as a note on this, if an alarm latches, what will happen is if you have a refrigerant leak, the sensor sees that refrigerant leak, the concentration exceeds the alarm level, the detector will go into alarm. And it will stay in an alarm until someone physically acknowledges that alarm on the system itself. So that's a latched system, and that's specifically called out under ASHRAE 15. And that's also quite typical for a number of customers in terms of how they have the unit configured. In addition to the alarms on here, you can also configure your Modbus setup. So you can configure the address, the baud rates, the stop bits, and the parity, etc. You have your outputs on here. So again, you can configure your analog output range, and you can see there's a number of different options available. 1 to 5 volts, 0 to 5, 0 to 10, 4 to 20 milliamps. So it gives you some level of flexibility. You can disable the internal buzzer on the detector. So as I mentioned earlier, the 400 series has audible and visual alarms. You can disable the audible alarm here. You can change your settings with regard to relay failsafe. And also as well, you have the capability to input in here an alarm delay. So for example, if you wish to have in there a small delay just to mitigate any potential risks of a false alarm, for example, you can put maybe a 5 or 10 minute delay on the alarm. In addition, you can set your analog zero adjustment just using this simple slide bar here. Okay, the next option along on this lower menu here is the logs screen. If I click on there, we don't have anything logged in here right now, but this would be the location to go to for any fault indications. It would log those details in this particular section here. You can also clear those logs as well using this screen. And then the final menu option that we have, which is a really useful tool, both as a commissioning tool and also as a diagnostic tool in the event that there is some sort of communication or connectivity issue on site with the installation, is this output test mode that we have on the app here. Again, as with all the different various aspects of the app, it's very intuitive and simple to use. To activate the test mode, you simply click the button to activate it here. When you switch this into the output test mode, on the MGS-400 controller, the detector that you have connected will actually show as offline on the controller. So that's a deliberate, just to make sure that it's when you're carrying out these tests, it doesn't interfere with the controller there. So as you can see, we have a number of different options here. We have an LED test button on here, so you can flick through on here from switching the LED on the 450 detector to off. You can cycle through green, red, and orange on here. You can test the internal buzzer. To make sure that operates correctly. You can activate the different relays on here. So in a second, we'll show you on the MGS demo kit what that looks like in terms of the display there. But just to highlight this, so you have relay 1, 2, and 3. If I was to click on these, you'll probably hear the click in the background of the relay switching. Okay. And then the final item on here is you have your analog output tests. So you can do it if you have something connected to the unit through the analog output. You can, again, using this simple slide gauge here, you can activate and run the analog signal. You can do that for the fault and there as well. So it's a very useful diagnostic tool. If we move across to the demo unit, I'll flick through some of these options and you'll see how that's demonstrated on the unit itself. Okay, so we're still in output test enable mode for the MGS-450, which is this detector here on the left-hand side. You'll see at the moment that the LED is switched to off. You have that off in the app here. If we cycle through, we have green, which is usually the standard operating LED color that you would see to indicate that the system is healthy, it's operating correctly. We have orange, which is usually a first stage alarm. And then we have red, which is a second stage alarm or a fault on the system. So again, you can quickly cycle through those. We have the internal buzzer. And then if we use this small panel down the bottom here, we can actually, in conjunction with the app, we can actually highlight and demonstrate relay switching. So if I switch relay 1, here, you can see the small yellow LED alarm 1 relay lights, relay 2 for the alarm 2 relay. and relay 3, which acts as a fault relay. On this small panel at the bottom here as well, we also have these two buttons here for both units. Let me just come back out of the output test enable mode. Okay, so we've highlighted the use of the output test. So to come back out of there, you simply switch it back to off here on the slide bar. The display returns to normal on the MGS-400 controller, and you can just come back into the home screen again. So that's the app. I think, as you'll hopefully agree, it's extremely intuitive, designed to be very easy to use, a very powerful tool for installation, commissioning, ongoing maintenance, and troubleshooting. As I say, it's free to download on Apple and Android devices. To disconnect from the Bluetooth, you simply click the disconnect button on here, and the Bluetooth disconnects from the MGS-450.